Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it is remaining very dry and unseasonably warm as well. Temperatures well into the low 20s, could even reach the mid 20s for a few later on this working week. Now, by definition, we actually are seeing an Indian summer. Now, I have focused on that in prior years, and even in the last few videos I have mentioned it more being an October or November event, but actually by definition we are seeing an Indian summer this week, and I'll explain why in a few minutes time. As we progress into the longer range though, the warm dry patterns could subside, unfortunately, and into the final few days of September it could go very unsettled once again, and cooler inevitably with westerly and northerly flows. Now, from the latest longer range charts, it looks like the jet stream is generally going to try and power up, but high pressure is going to hang on and could be a bit of a battle. But there's one feature that's really cropping up, especially on the GFS, but also on some of the other runs, is the possibility of seeing an ex-hurricane mixing in to the pattern. It could really energise the North Atlantic, and it could potentially put a real spanner in the works. So the GFS actually does produce quite a strong ex-hurricane in the North Atlantic, really spinning up areas of low pressure and the jet stream. Other runs, not so much. So that's why it is a massive headache for those longer term prospects, because it could be very warm and dry, or continue very warm and dry, but it could also turn severely unsettled. And as we'll see, as said in the second half of the video, it's all up for grabs. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, I'm recording this around 11 PM on Monday evening, and it is bone dry and it is very warm. Temperatures will be rising over the coming days. Sunday was warm for many, but it was widely warm and dry today through Monday, and as I said, it will continue for the rest of the week. A few thunderstorms maybe later on in the week towards the weekend, but they look fairly isolated across England and Wales at this stage. We'll keep an eye on those. And as I said a minute ago, this is technically by definition an Indian summer. Now, the reason for that is because by definition an Indian summer is well above average, unseasonably warm temperatures after the first widespread ground frost. Now, actually, we saw a ground frost last week for many areas. Yes, not towns and cities, but for many rural areas, temperatures dropped down towards freezing and very low single digits in those towns and cities. So by definition, we've seen that first widespread very cold night, and now we're seeing a big warm up once again. Now, the reason why initially I didn't think that the Indian summer, this could technically be called an Indian summer, because I thought traditionally Indian summers come in October or November because frosts are normally later on. But actually, having realised this actually from looking at the weather outlooks opening page, that technically, we are seeing an Indian summer right now because of those frosts last week. As you can see here, last week there were some notable cold nights, with ground frost being widespread even in the south. So yes, this could be an Indian summer. Very interesting indeed. You learn something new every day. I thought, traditionally Indian summers had to be in October, November, but no, just has to be after that first frost. So it could technically be in August, even though it is almost impossible to see a frost through August. But yeah, very interesting indeed. If you do go back to the live radar though, you can see overnight tonight temperatures are going to be very warm still, especially in the north and west, but there's a bit more cloud. Further south and eastwards, it is going to be cooler nights, and that's because of the clear skies allowing all that radiation and that heat to dissipate away. But for the time of year, it's still warm nights, nothing too cold at all. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, you can see as we head into Tuesday, it's looking bone dry and very sunny once again. Stunning conditions and temperatures jumping up by a degree or two. As we head into Wednesday, exactly the same. Very warm and very dry. Temperatures rising slightly higher, 23, 24, maybe an isolated 25. The temperatures have slowly climbed throughout the last couple of days as this warmth, this air mass consolidates. We can see this quite regularly in warm and cold spells. As we get nearer to quite a notable event, the air masses under these high-resolution models do verify a little bit different, and especially in these warmer spells can get slightly warmer, colder spells can get slightly colder, and in this sort of pattern what we're seeing is those upper air temperatures nudging up by a degree or two later this week, and it means those temperatures at the surface are, instead of more 21, 22 a few days ago, now 23, 24, wouldn't be surprised to hear 25 or a 26. As we head into Thursday, another great day. Very sunny, very warm, a bit more cloud around, but nothing too bad. Into Friday, again, another very warm and sunny day. A few odd thunderstorms breaking out, though. That's something to keep an eye on. And the same could be said for Saturday. Maybe a little bit more organised in terms of thunderstorms breaking out. Again, we'll need to keep a close eye on that. And that's all because of that weak cut-off low to our south, slowly pushing northwards into the weekend. So still looking very warm, very dry. Just the risk, or at least an elevated risk, of a few thunderstorms. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see they are very warm, or turning very warm at the moment, and they're going to remain very warm for the rest of the week. We can run through this pretty quickly, staying around that 10 to 14 degree range all the way towards the weekend. Even towards the weekend, dips slightly, but still is very warm and pleasant, and that is because the surface is very warm. We'll need a proper cold front to move through to shift that warm air that we've developed at the surface by the end of this week. So a classic warm spell. Again, if this was a month or two ago, it would likely be a heat wave, but being late September, we can't really call it a heat wave. We're not reaching those heat wave thresholds, even though we are a good 5 to 10 degrees above average in many areas. Now, if you look at those max temperatures, you can see as we progress through Tuesday, temperatures will rise once again towards the high teens or low 20s, looking at 21, maybe 22 at the top temperature, both, as I said, towards northern Scotland and southern England. It's that spread of temperatures that is the remarkable thing. It's not just the south and the east, it's all areas are warm and dry. As we head into Wednesday, temperatures will rise further, 23 or 24 towards the southeast, and still looking at low 20s further northwards as well. Into Thursday, very similar temperatures, maybe a more widespread 23, 24, again 25, 26, not out of the question. And into Friday, again 22, 23, a little bit lower in certain areas, perhaps slight change in wind direction, especially across Scotland. And again, those thunderstorms, a bit more cloud around, making those temperatures dip slightly, but still very warm. And the same could be said for Saturday. Again, more scattered temperatures, not really a big wall of orange there, more scattered 23s and 24s. And again, that's because of those storms. So yeah, looking stunning the rest of the week. So make sure you do go out and enjoy. I keep saying this across the last few videos. I know it's a little bit doom and gloom, but we are heading towards winter, and in a couple of weeks' time, we will probably not see 20 degrees again until at least March, and most likely April or even May. So do cherish this 5-6 months until the next warm weather, as we would say. So yeah, do make sure you do cherish these temperatures at the moment, even though coming off the back of summer where regularly we'd reach 20 degrees pretty much every day, especially across England, and seeing temperatures up towards the 30s. So this is kind of just the norm. But this happens every year, and very slowly we descend towards those cold, dark nights in November, and we're all sat there thinking, oh, I wish it was back in September where it was sunny and warm. So do cherish this for the time being. Now, if you do look at the latest GFS, it is very warm and dry for the time being, but as I said, in the longer term, it does really change things up. High pressure in control at the moment. That cut-off low nudging northwards later this week. That could give a few thunderstorms in places. Doesn't really strengthen, so I'm not expecting anything too widespread. But again, it's something to keep an eye on when we get those high-resolution runs. I'm going to get a little bit closer time frame later this week. And then you can see westerly flow returns. Low pressure, and then high pressure tries to nudge back in. But look at that ex-hurricane developing in the North Atlantic, or developing into a generic low-pressure system in the North Atlantic. Really spins up and turns it exceptionally unsettled towards the last few days of September. Yes, it's unsettled prior to that. We have a fairly strong low-pressure system, standard low-pressure system moving in, but it is that hurricane, that ex-tropical system really spinning up in the North Atlantic. You can see why it is an ex-tropical system, because it's got that hot core. It actually develops quite far north in the Atlantic, very far north in fact, but because it's got that hot core, we know it's a tropical system before turning into a more generic low as it spins up over the UK, where you've got both a warm sector and a cold sector, whereas a couple of days prior it was all warm air, you can see in the core. So yeah, developing into a more generic low, but turning very unsettled and colder inevitably for the UK. So not good there from the GFS. Very unsettled, very windy, and really horrible to end September and start October. But there's no guarantees that that will happen. All depends on how quickly and with what power does the jet stream finally return. If you compare to the GM, again, broadly very similar, high pressure in control, that low pressure, that little sneaky cut-off low developing further south as that trough trying to push northwards, but actually gets kept away into early next week, and it actually remains warm and dry for much of next week as well. Eventually that ex-hurricane is moving in, but we have got quite a firm block of high pressure over the top of us, and that ex-hurricane is actually trying to encourage a southerly wind. So that will be interesting to see what happens with that. If that kind of skirts over the top of this high pressure block, then we could actually go very warm indeed, wafting up very hot southerly flow. But if it does go more easterly direction, then we could be in trouble with quite a stormy spell there to end September. Again, we'll have to wait and see for development for that. And finally, the latest ECMWF high pressure dominating all of the rest of this week, staying very warm and dry, that cut-off low developing slightly to our south with that trough, and then eventually towards day 10, it does turn very unsettled as well. Not so much ex-hurricane there developing, just more of a generic, colder low-pressure system, and again, quite a strong northerly flow, so wouldn't be surprised to potentially see frost returning if we do pull in that very cold air once again, coming directly from the north. Taking it a bit longer, there is quite a big warm sector associated with this low, so we'd have to see a persistent northerly to get properly cold air in once again, as this low does come in off the Atlantic and it's the back edge. We see that northerly flow, but again, it's one to keep a very close eye on, because for the time being, looking very warm and dry, but longer term prospects look all over the place, if we're being completely honest. And we can see that from the latest ensembles. Very warm and dry, good few degrees above average for the rest of this week. It doesn't look phenomenal here on the ensemble charts, but it's the persistency of the warm and dry conditions which allows those temperatures to rise. These sort of air masses, standard, if we just saw this as one isolated day, probably produce widely high teens, maybe just nudge towards 20 or 21. But we get those 24s, 25s, 26s because of the persistency. These upper air temperatures are not that remarkable. It's the high pressure with those generally warm temperatures allowing the surface to warm up very quickly and stay very warm for the rest of this week. You can see though precipitation spikes starting to climb in around 6 or 7 days time, slowly moving in. A couple of days ago it was 8, 9 days, now 6 or 7. And you can see it does stay warm for the last sort of week or so of September. Some colder runs appearing, but mostly warm. But precipitation does pick up quite substantially. And the thing we need to keep an eye on is sea level pressure dropping quite a bit longer term, showing signs that the high pressure is losing its hold. Doesn't mean it's gone, but just losing its hold. Now, if you compare to the latest ECMWF ensembles, broadly very similar, very warm and dry for the next 5-6 days, then turning unsettled and eventually turning a bit cooler. Still to play for though, as we saw from those operational runs, it could remain warmer and drier for longer all the way to the end of September, or it could go out with a bang September with big, deep storm systems moving in. It's all up to play for, and again, we'll have to wait and see the next couple of days to see what those models do resolve to and see what they do develop. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new and enjoy that Indian summer for the rest of this week.